Welcome back to the IE Media Podcast. More than 900 people lost their lives at Jonestown in 1978, in one of history's most infamous cult tragedies. In this audio-only conversation, Marcus reveals why those events came far closer to his family than most people could ever imagine. This is how he remembers it.
I don't know where you want to start with this conversation, Marcus, because I remember quite a bit of it, but I'm sure you can put it in some sort of timeline.
Oh, right. I mean, I would say let's begin at the beginning, but I mean, there's lots of beginnings here. Really, I mean, anytime you get involved with, not just involved with an organization, but just a mentality, it takes you down, as we were saying before, several rabbit holes, and it can be quite innocent. It's not that it's deceitful or bad, but the doorways that it opens up can lead to predators, not just people who would, take advantage of you physically or, in some cases people, sexually. I mean, but just spiritually as well. And I think that's what a lot of people maybe have been affected by today, whether it be the politics, they're going through or the, religious beliefs. When they invest, the personal, intimate, ways they see the universe and all of existence, in a simple man or in a vote or political philosophy, that's when things can maybe get a little out of hand. And I think a little bit of that will reflect in my story about the turbulent things that can happen, the dynamics that can be caused because of that. A lot of them good, but a lot of them, can be disastrous. And we are, rolling into that time when we're going to start mirroring a lot of the things that came out of the 60s and 70s. So having lived through that as a small kid and seeing how an adult, went through that transition.
Yeah, I think it's important to understand. True. Like I said, we're seeing a lot of people now searching for truth, especially with the increase of connectivity in the internet and the speed of things and how you can access information so rapidly. And it's easy to get tucked down the wrong rabbit holes. It can be quite dangerous, and we're going to be talking about that, aren't we? But it's just to make people kind of think for themselves. And like I say, the path to truth is forever evolving. You will go down certain rabbit holes, and then what you believe to be true 1 week or year to the next could actually change over time. You look back in hindsight, you're like, oh yeah, I missed that. Oh, I fell for that one, but that's true. And, and that's what it is. And we're all, as a collective, trying to get to the bottom of things and trying to uncover the dark secrets and how we can actually change things for the better.
Definitely within ourselves. As I was sitting here thinking, I think a lot of people have had conversations about cults or accusing other people of cult mentalities. But I'm going to tell you something that's probably even more of a pandemic or epidemic amongst people is actually people wanting to be cult leaders. So this is something that that a lot of people may not even realize that they've encountered, or the feelings or the emotional experience of having that kind of power or impact upon people. And for some people who've actually crossed that boundary and then realized what they had done, because you have to have a conscious understanding that, okay, this is a boundary I'm overstepping, that I have more impact or influence on a person than they may even have upon themselves. Now, you either recognize I can use this for something beneficial, I can help people with it, or I can use it for my own ends. And I think a lot of people, what they come to find out, in my experience, just my opinion, is that when they cross that boundary and realize they have an impact, it does get used for selfish means. And I think that's the state of the world that we're living in, because we're impacting and influencing each other. We can't help it. Some of it's healthy. Some of it, when you're really trying to convey your message and you really feel passionate about it, you have to put it in terms where simplistic ways that people can understand. But when you get past that and you realize that now I'm doing it for a reason that's not noble, it's not creative, it's not something I think is helpful, it's to satisfy a particular need that I have within myself or want within myself. So, like I said, that's where a lot of my story begins, with this, someone trying to make things right, trying to correct a ill mistake that was probably having a child maybe a little too early. And this begins with my mother. She had me. She was a very beautiful woman, very intelligent woman, but had me, unfortunately, a little too early in a very impoverished area. And this is the late 70s, mid 70s. Vietnam is over. And so a lot of American soldiers are coming home, and a great many of them disenchanted, didn't want to go to Vietnam, had to go. It was either 1 year Vietnam or, 10 years in an American prison, and not that, just even the prison that comes afterwards. So after leaving prison, now you have a prison record. So nobody is obligated to hire you. You can't get credit. You can't rent a flat or an apartment. You know what I'm saying? In many cases, you can't even have a license. You damn sure can't vote. And so you become a kind of non-person, a kind of continuation of your punishment. So they had no choice but to go ahead and take that path. But I think that the result of that is that that was probably even more dire choice, because they came back to America. My father would be one of them. They often had been hit by chemicals that were in Vietnam to deforest the jungles.
Yeah.
And were led into there. Typically very poor, young, black and white men. Anyone who couldn't go to college. And that's what we talked about, the current leader of the nation, not to get into his business. But this gentleman decided he was too, the feet, the bones in his feet decided that they were a little too spiky. And so he had to get an exception to join that great endeavor that other people's parents had to go through. So mine came back. My father came back from that. He wasn't quite right. I think he did the best he could, but no, he wasn't. He wasn't the most productive man he could. And what happens is that he got hit on both ends. Right. He went to a war that a lot of people disliked. So that made him be disenfranchised from his own people.
Yeah. And
then when he came back, he wasn't supposed to complain about the problems or the issues that happened over there. He was supposed to just be quiet and get on with it. For the people who came back from the wars before. But this war was complicated. There was no good guy. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And they were doing some very foul things, after, and they wouldn't even have known that they were doing, because it was difficult to tell who the enemy and who was not.
Compartmentalized.
Exactly. So it was a lot of problems. So he came back the result of all this stuff. And so I was born, and my mother had just graduated from high school, very young, and lived in a very conservative area, very, very religious type area, evangelical Christian religion. I don't know how different that is to Anglican or Church of England, type religion, but ours is very emotional. And so also it's very rooted in the old school of, that you break one of the 10 Commandments is 10 Commandment type results.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So
you're getting lynched.
You know what I'm saying? So one of those situations where if you were worse, you would probably if the punishment was death, you wish you had died, because they would make you feel so bad about your life around you. So you'd be so condemned. And my mother having me early, that was one of the things. So like a lot of young women, she, especially in the 60s and 70s, they went to California. And the name of the sign on the side of the bus or the Volkswagen, Bug, or the little van or anything that was heading west was California or bust. But this was a common sign that people would always see, and they'd jump in. They may decide, what, I don't want to go back home. Yeah. I don't want to go to that stupid job. They would jump on the bus, and all of a sudden they're in California. It's the 60s and 70s, you know what I'm saying? It's hippies, it's drugs, it's love, it's cults. And this is where my mother would arrive, Yeah. So it was fantastic, though. I mean, I don't want to say that sets up the story as to, you know what I'm saying, she's arriving.
Now, if I remember correctly, this is the Jonestown massacre.
Yeah. So,
and actually, if it wasn't for a certain delay, let's say, that we'll get into later, then you wouldn't even be here right now, would you?
No doubt. I would, like a great many other people, because it was truly a tragedy. In fact, if you may not know what the Jones massacre is, but you probably heard one of the memes that came from it. In fact, this was a meme before I think people knew what a meme was. Don't drink the Kool-Aid. So the Kool-Aid, in this case, is this cordial fluid. I know you may or may not know it, flavored drink. And that's what they did. They used that or some product similar to it. They put poison in it, and they killed, or at least caused people to either kill themselves in a group suicide that took close to the lives of over, I think, close to 1,000 people. And about 40% of those people were children.
Wow.
So, and unfortunately, there's a very gruesome but very public picture of the Jonestown massacre. And in fact, as we're in the studio, I'm just going to simply bring it up now so I can have a visual with you as to what it looked like. Right. So I've just while I was talking, I picked up, Googled an image of the Jonestown massacre, which happened around, I believe, 1978, and I just wanted to look at the visual of the result of people falling. Really the best of intentions, and it's nearly, it's just an image of bodies stacked up side by side this is the South American jungle, really.
Yeah.
And it's horrible because a great many people, they did it to themselves. They were holding themselves. They were holding, embracing themselves while they were doing it. People they loved, people they cared for. And this was a very unique situation because it was a very multi-generational, multiracial. At the time, obviously, this is a great many, it's over 40 plus years ago when the dynamics in the world were not the same. So this was something very unique. But the way it ended brought to end a very beautiful idea of what the world could have been. But I think what happens is people begin to become more rational and realize that trying to pursue a rainbow and end up, in the most horrible of places.
A lot of them people that migrated to go there didn't really have a clue, did they?
Could not know.
They thought it was this like a paradise, living off the grid, their own society, and this guy was basically saying he was going to save them,
Right. And obviously take them away from all the dynamics that were happening, as I said before, towards the end of the 70s when I was born, where they had, the people who were disenfranchised, having come back from wars, having come back from, major protests, having been disappointed from, having done all that effort and work. And in fact, that may even lead into a conversation that, you went to this, this rally, and it was good and the people there. What happens is that things take time to change. And the thing that concerns me is that what happens when people get disenchanted and begin to move on? This is when scenarios exist where people jump up like a Jim Jones of this tragedy and say, I have the solution. I have the answer. You know what I'm saying? And so, I always encourage people when you, out, definitely on these meetings and you're listening to the main individual, cool. You know what I'm saying? If you catch somebody who may be going so far that it may be, that it feels like it may attract the wrong type of attention to the movement that you want, maybe it's good to maybe call that out, challenge that, you know what I'm saying? Because you don't know who else is listening who may not be, have a basis, having a ground, grounding is in what is, productive and unproductive. Yeah. So, I encourage everybody.
And that happens as well with a lot of these grassroots movements. They do have agents set up. Sounds kind of far-fetched, but you can go and read all the stories, even from everything from Greenpeace activists here in the UK. They had an agent who actually...
Provocateurs,
he had a relationship with some girl. He actually fathered a child. He had a fake name and everything. And then about 12 years later, she found out, the truth, that he was undercover all along, and he used to, go out with the group and send these little logs back, what had happened today, and stuff like that.
Didn't some of that happen in Manchester? No, and I thought one of the cops were... I think I know what you're talking. There was another operation that happened, not that dissimilar.
There's been a few, over the years.
I heard of that happened. I think it happened about 10 years ago. Like I said, it tells you how long I've been in Britain.
It just shows you if they're going to do that for environmental activists, what they're going to do for anti-government activists. That's much more of a threat to them, isn't it, politically and stuff. So, especially when you're challenging narratives and going against the...
Definitely challenge.
Yeah.
Definitely challenge.
Yeah. So, but you've got to think for yourself, haven't you? And I think that this guy must have been very powerful to get people to travel from all over the world.
His background is...
You said there was people from Manchester there, wasn't there?
No, this is a different culture. And that actually goes into another conversation, which is the Waco situation. And that's crazy because because that's in the South. And that's like one of the most obscure places, it's like in Texas, and then even the most obscure places within that state. And we just wonder, what are all these British people doing in the middle of nowhere?
So they were at Waco, yeah.
And in fact, I think about 40 or 50% of them were. It's because literally, and this is ironic, where I live in the city center is just a street or two over from where this man had once recruited back in the early 90s. late 80s, early 90s. He brought a lot of these people over into the middle of Texas. There was, he was so-called, stocking guns or what you can do legally there.
Yeah.
But, what I'm saying, it all went wrong when the FBI tried to actually invade the place was called Mount Carville, something like that. And so when they tried to actually enter the building, it set fire and everybody was killed inside. So very horrible. So I don't know if you ever heard once again called the Waco tragedy. That begins itself also with a cult-like mentality. I don't know if it ended necessarily in the most productive way, because like I said,
yeah,
where I live, that's just the right for people to bear arms.
Yeah,
they're doing it in the middle of nowhere. That's just their business. That's the way I see it. I
think the FBI took a lot of scrutiny for how they handled that, didn't they?
Without doubt.
You can go and look at a lot of documentaries on it and see different sides of it and stuff. But again, it no doubt it was a cult, wasn't it?
Right. But like I said, just if you want to research, there's a lot of people from just the Manchester area alone. I think the vast majority came from the greater Manchester. That were in the middle of nowhere, America. Not that in nowhere is in America, but that was an isolated spot. But like I said, moving on. I wanted to really get back to my story, and so if you just to continue it, because it's how my mother actually came in contact with a lot of this group.
Shows how easy it is, doesn't it?
It's because it has nothing to do with. See, here's the thing that I want to clarify. It has nothing to do with your strength of mind or whether you're foolish or ignorant. It actually deals with the aspirational part of you. You know what I'm saying? The part that wants to see something different. Not just radical, but you see somebody saying what you are saying internally, what you're feeling internally. Somebody articulates that, perfectly. In fact, even better than you could say it. They got you. You know what I'm saying? And once they have that door open, they can begin to not feed you, but just introduce you to more things and say, look, you can accept it. You don't have to believe me, but I've said so many things that you agree with before. I've made, that you felt, before. It becomes natural. So the same thing that happened to my mother. What they did was they naturally started looking for mothers who were single, who were looking for somebody to do babysitting so they could actually go out and, get a job. And that's how my mother interacted with them. There was a church that was giving, offering free babysitters or free daycare. That's more appropriate, so that they can go out and work. And this is the 70s. So I don't, like I said, I don't know how many people are listening, but in America, that wasn't, most women still lived, stay-at-home moms and stuff. There were not a lot of women in the work field, especially like mothers. By the time they became mothers, they became wives. So anybody who was outside of that, they didn't have like a daycare system like they would have now. Maybe it's a similar situation in Britain. Because cultures were not that much different, I assume, back in the 60s and 70s as well. But they were giving away free. So, free is good. And it's a church, even better. You know what I'm saying? It's at least got that kind of trust. But she didn't realize what she had entered into. And here's the thing about it. She never actually got to the inner circle, which were all the crazy. Well, am I the one to say it's crazy? With all the intensity and the obligation happened. She's on the outskirts being drawn in, you know what I'm saying? So like a kind of magnetic field. Purposely, you see that the people who are closer have greater value, more responsibility, more respect. They may have been at the bottom of the rung of society. Women who may have been prostitutes before, women who may have had multiple children, no husband or something like that, or, have been raped or maybe had mental health issues, all of a sudden rise into positions of authority instantaneously without having to, go through all the hills and valleys that, that companies, getting to a position of leadership over people. So that's what I think it became so tempting, you know what I'm saying? That all of a sudden, all you have to do is now say the right things, and now you instantaneously a leader in a group of 10, 20, 100 people. You know what I'm saying? Wow. You had no power, and now you're powerful. I think that's, I don't know if it was that, you know what I'm saying, but it was the attraction to authority figures. People wouldn't judge them, accept them exactly how they are. You know what I'm saying? And also tell them that the reason they're going through this situation is because they've been chosen. They've been chosen to go through this situation.
Yeah.
And so now you're arriving in the right place. You're with the right people, So just to go back in the story about Jim Jones, which was the leader of this organization, his story starts back enough. This is the 1978 when the massacre happened. where nearly 1,000 people committed group suicide, and the casualties that came around that, because it all was instigated by families concerned that the children, children were in the middle of South American jungle that just been dug up, and it created a little farm and stuff there, and a little operation where they could, self-sustain and eat for themselves, take care of themselves. All of a sudden, that's in the middle of, and they couldn't check up on them. They couldn't get word from them, Yeah. So
I think even some journalists tried to go out there, didn't they?
They went out there with a senator, you know what I'm saying? And so when the senator was, when he was first there, he got nothing but, he was in front of the cult leader. He got nothing but praise. Everyone's screaming. In fact, they have videos on YouTube that show Jim Jones sitting amongst, his, large legion of followers, and they're yelping and, happy that, they're here, and the senators, tell them, but obviously everyone happy, everyone's satisfied in being here. Everyone's expressed. But then as he walked away and walked alone, people would slip him small notes and say, can you get me out of here?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So by the time it was time for him to leave, about 5 or 6 people, now out of a group of 1,000, people just said, I want to go back. You know what I'm saying? And can we go back with you? And because he's a government representative, of course, they had to first go, they were in the middle of the jungle, right?
So how long had they been there at this point?
By this time, at least about a year. You know what I'm saying? By themselves. But the operation, I think, had started several years earlier. But now the major flock, and the reason it started so fast is because his cult activities in L.A. have been found out. So this man was well respected before he became.
Was he fleeing America?
He was.
Investigation.
You know what I'm saying? So, and then fleeing the further investigation of them probably sending in an armed, you know what I'm saying? Because the senator came back and said, look, there's a lot of people around there and they got a lot of guns and they're in a foreign nation. So probably going back to the nations, and just asking them on behalf of them, as government, can you basically just, see if everyone's all right, do a, a health check, whatever. But basically have men come into the camp with guns to let them know, that if anybody wants to leave, they can't. He wasn't going to let that happen. So that was the mass suicide. Yeah, but he did leave the U.S. After the scandals in his own church, having sex with, children, having sex with, forced sex, not with just children, but, people of the same sex, having, beating people, often. Yeah, the day-to-day ritual.
Most of his followers probably wouldn't have been aware of
everything. This man was
before the internet.
He was
stuff,
a con man to the end. I mean, he was doing things. In fact, there's a movie called the Guyana Story, which is a very good. It came out about a year or two after. It's extremely good. It's probably on YouTube now, or big chunks of it is on YouTube. And basically, it's like a not a documentary, but literally a movie of the story, but it shows you that he was a con man. He was doing things like he would say he was saving people, curing cancer, and he would all of a sudden in front of his in front of his church, he would take his hand, and he would thrust into the person's abdomen, rub his knuckle inside, and all of a sudden come out with chicken guts on his hand, but tell them it's cancer,
Wow.
And so people would believe him, and they had people who would be actors in the crowd who was sitting there, in a wheelchair, and all of a sudden, get up, woman, get up.
Wow.
And the thing about it was a lot of this, because he was a white preacher in a black, congregation. I mean, so that was the core in the beginning. So this was a unique situation. And he played into a lot of people's, especially a lot of Southern perceptions of religion that maybe not, I would say there's probably today wouldn't be as relevant, or would be easy to say, okay, that I understand this is the religion, but this other stuff maybe not so much. And so, people instantaneously jumping out of, being dead, and almost, that's not something that's happening right now to people,
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is that by him being so charismatic amongst, his black congregation, he attracted a very multicultural congregation. So even white people came to him, and that's when he started doing crazy things like taking the Bible, he throw it on the ground, he put his foot on it and said, I'm the idol, I am God. And so he declared himself. That is when he went into cult-like territory. And anybody who did not agree with that was beaten. They were bludgeoned. They were, they were defamed in the news. He probably did some of the first doxing, in the U.S. because, he would do things such as, get your information and put it all over, inside of dirty magazines or newspapers for people to call, for, put your wife's telephone number, your wife's business, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, if you went against
your children's business. I mean, he would just do anything he could to, you know what I'm saying, to let you know, don't mess with us. You know, we are not this goody good, you know. But people would also get public discipline as well. So everyone would come up, adults, children would have these public paddlings for every time they, you know what I'm saying? So sometimes it would be, 20 or 50 or 200. And there would be sometimes children giving it to men because, you know, the men had broken the rule and the children had told on them, and therefore they give the punishment to. It was it broke down a lot of boundaries. Yeah. So because he became the father, they no longer became the parent. He became the authority figure. And I say so. This is the environment my mother would walk in at the very end when he became quite desperate. When the rumors around him were swirling, but the congregations or the churches never. Sometimes they wouldn't identify that they were part of his organization. They would just say they were a church. And people just kind of accepted that. You know, if you're a church and you're in a church building, but you could easily rent out a church space, you know. So if you were that, then you would just accept it. Plus, you were just doing daycare for children. It seemed almost more than innocent. A godsend, really, to have that kind of, you know, situation. But the first thing that she knows that was different about this is that they told her, even after she came up for work, no, you can go ahead and leave your child here. You can leave him here overnight. It's not a problem. You know, you can do that. And in fact, while you're doing that, we want you to go, you know, we're going to take you to have a meal over at this building. There's going to be a lot of other girls as well. And if you want to come, okay. Because, I mean, first of all, one of the things you're going to be doing is fighting how you're going to put food on the table, you know, after you pick up your child after work or school. Now they're taking care of the meal and they're taking care of his or her meal, you know, giving them a bath, some change of clothes. I mean, it was too enticing, especially for people in that situation. And that's how they got me growing. And what they would do is also they would separate the children. And so I was too young, you know what I'm saying? I wouldn't have known. I was only at the time, you know what I'm saying? I couldn't even probably talk at the time. And I must have been about a year plus. I didn't have the ability to have any kind of impact on the situation. So I couldn't voice that I didn't want to, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, of course.
Only but cry, but it didn't really matter because what they would simply do is just create more and more distance. And then they would have somebody who would, what's the word? Not supplicate, but replace, you know what I'm saying, your mother as being the person that you physically identify. So for the first year, I was looking at this one person as being my mother who probably wasn't, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But I think I was too young to recognize that this person, this new individual, is actually my mother, you know what I'm saying? Only a glimpse of that other person's face, only a glimpse of, you know, past images. But that's what they did. They created that difference. So a lot of the people who were in the congregation, their children went to South America, but they stayed, you know, like the older ones, they stayed like in the cities and towns because they wouldn't have made it out there.
Yeah.
But he called them out there away from their parents, away from the city, the town, you know what I'm saying, and come and follow me, you know, and they did.
And he called your mother out as well.
You know what I'm saying? And they called my mother, not just my mother come out, but me as well.
Wow.
But they need it from everyone if you're leaving the country. Now, this is where they kind of messed up. Because the first time they were actually quite slick. What they did was they took everybody to Florida. You know what I'm saying? They just said, we're going to have a small charter plane that goes to Puerto Rico, which in America, that's part of the United States. So Puerto Rico is this little island, you know what I'm saying? And what they did, they took a plane and shot all the way down to South America, deep into it, you know what I'm saying? But what, you know what I'm saying? That was the mistake they made because that got found out very quickly. And so now they needed to take commercial flights, which is legal. You know, you can do so. I mean, nobody knew what was happening up until then. But commercial flight required to know that if I'm an American to show, you know, I'm American. We don't do the passport thing like Britain does. That's kind of unusual. In fact, before September 11th, if you were an American, you could go from the top of Canada all the way to the bottom of South America just on your U.S. driver's license.
Wow.
That's how powerful I think the U.S. presence was in the world. That's why people, I don't know if you know this, but I was a kid, people used to feel proud. They didn't have a passport. Didn't need one. You know what I'm saying? We can go throughout the whole, you know.
Through the whole America.
Basically. And not just that, but there's a series of islands that in the Pacific, you know what I'm saying, like Guam, you know, that are in places like, you know, Japan and stuff. And even because of the, you know, because of the American military, Japan, you could even go there, you know what I'm saying, with just your driver's license, as long as you got for the place that was near to an American base or something. Yeah. Like I said, now, I think it actually consolidated between like Canada and in the U.S. You could go back and forth before that, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Without needing, all you have to do is just show your driver's license. In fact, a lot of the immigration posts, you know, in Canada, It's just a little automated machine where, like you can literally walk around it, Before it was just a little thing where you wrote your name down and said, I'm from the subject. You just slipped into a little box. There was nobody there. Right. It was too rural, or it's just, not worth manning between America and Canada. But that's why I think a lot of people found where America was susceptible, because all you had to do was get into Canada, and you could slip into America. You know what I'm saying?
South Mexico, North Canada.
Oh, no doubt. You could really do that. But like I said, get back to my story. Yeah. What stopped me is that my mother needed to show proof that I was, U.S., so I had to have a birth certificate. That means she had to go all the way back to where I was born to go get it, because it was the 70s. She had to get it, and that would have taken, and then for them to produce it, that would have been a couple of days. First of all, she didn't have that money to be doing that, so she had to ask them to mail it. That was going to take about 6 weeks to 2 months. Wow. And in the middle of that,
and there was a deadline,
that's when the tragedy happened, you know what I'm saying? Because he was this is when he was desperately trying to get everybody to come. If you were part of his family, come now. You know what I'm saying?
So if you would have already had that, and when that would have been it?
You know what I'm saying? If my mother had went maybe about a year earlier, and he had called us early, because he was calling people in waves. First the inner circle, and then the outer circles, and then and the people who were just orbiting, and then the new people who had just arrived. Because he had so many different little organizations. Some of them were nutrition. Some of them were taking care of the elderly. Some of them were babysitting. He got into the places where people, they couldn't help but crash into you. They couldn't help but meet you because they needed this service, especially if it was free. Yeah. Taking care of children, taking care of older people for free. Yeah. Come on. That was guaranteed to get a lot of people's attention, especially back then. So, like I said, because you couldn't produce that in the middle of waiting for my birth certificate to arrive, that's when the tragedy happened, when they'd all
a matter of weeks?
I would say probably about a month, you know what I'm saying? Because it was going to take 2 months to arrive. Wow. And like I said...
a month later then, you possibly wouldn't have been here.
No, I wouldn't have been there. But the thing about it is that a lot of people, even though they were not at the camp, when he gave the command to do it, because this is the unusual part, and I read this in a documentary.
Didn't he used to hold like
we call white nights
test runs?
Yeah,
where he'd get people to drink this stuff, and they'd think maybe that was it that night. It was going to happen, and then it didn't.
He did what they call white nights. I'm glad you brought that up.
So he gave them a false sense of security, didn't he?
Like I said, what he did was he took them to the both ends. So you're right to bring this up. This it does any kind of psychologist, psychiatrist This is my understanding of what we call white nights, something he would do to this is when he's in his camp at in South America.
In the evenings, doing his little sermon.
All of a sudden, in the middle of the night, he would have these, those little microphones, horns, blowing up, you know what I'm saying? And everybody would run to the center of the camp, and everybody was supposed to drink, don't ask, just drink, do whatever syrup or whatever was in front of you. And then, and everybody knew that if they did that was they were all committing suicide. And then when it didn't happen, they were like, it was a kind of a trained, what do they call that Pavlov's bell? When they would, when the horn went off, they came outside, just drank the thing. Yeah. They didn't know if it was poison or not. Because they had never been poisoned before, they just kind of went along with it.
So each time they did that just made them more prepared for it.
It made it normalized.
Yeah.
It didn't, the sense of danger around it
desensitized.
Was because it was just a routine. But then they realized it when that senator, so the scenario that caused death, a senator had come to visit. And then, as I said, but he was leaving, they had literally had a place in the jungle. So they carved this place in the middle of the jungle, and it was a couple of miles away just to get to a small airstrip, just an airstrip. Nobody's maintaining it for the private plane to land. And so that's what the senator needed to go back to. So when he left the camp, he had to first of all go a couple of miles through the jungle with his people, driving, and all of them armed, right? And they took him back to the private plane in the middle of the jungle. And for some reason, they got the radio that, no, they're not leaving. And so they went back and started shooting everybody who they had just taken to this private plane in the middle of the jungle.
The senator.
No, he didn't make it. But they actually have video. Two perspectives. One is just showing the guys leaving and everybody's hugging and people are putting stuff on the
And this is on YouTube,
flight.
Isn't it?
Oh, no doubt.
Yeah.
If you want to look this up, look at all the massacre that came around it, because I think it shows a group of videos about what happened. So one video is a standard, more popular video. It shows the senator hugging and shaking people's hand and people getting on the plane and everything seems to be all right. And then there's another film. This is from a second camera holding. This is after the shooting started. and he shows them literally getting out because they were all in these little trucks with these like like a pickup truck that has like a little fence in the back where everybody can stand in the back, without falling out. And people are hopping over that with guns, and they're shooting at people randomly. And this camera guy is like right next to the wheel of the plane, just kind of keep his head down. And people being shot right beside him, left and right, who are laying very still. They probably already been shot and they got him point blank. I thought, wow, to see that up close,
So
and he survived that as well.
That was the point of no return, wasn't it?
He survived it. This is a very interesting thing about observation. The guy who survived that, he actually was part of a documentary who survived the incident and was describing that, people who ran into the jungle, some of them made it, some didn't. Some people, tried to hide. That didn't really work either because they just came around the planes, went inside the planes. He said what he did was he saw someone in front of him, another member of the audiovisual staff, and somebody shot at him, and he yelped, "Oh!" when it happened. And then it came over close to him and, shot him in the head. So he said somebody from a distance shot at him and it hit him in the arm. This is the cameraman who's taking the secondary video that you can see after the shooting begins. And it hits him in the arm and his arm explodes and he stays completely still.
Wow.
And he said that's probably what saved his life because they were just trying to see, are you going to, and flinch, and then they come and finish you off. So they thought they'd already killed him. And he said that the blood from his arm made it look like, he'd been shot, because he was head first down on the ground, with his arm out. And definitely look for that interview of the cameraman. But I just thought wow. He observed one situation not go right. He was determined that he was going to live. Even with a bullet to the arm, did not move or make a sound. It just shows you...
So I can imagine from that moment on, Jim Jones got everyone back to the camp.
Oh, no doubt.
And it was like, they're coming for us, us.
No doubt.
We need to do this now. And
no doubt. And that's how he was able to, you're right.
So they thought they were going to be killed anyway, didn't they?
I think half of them knew this was beyond, and in fact, there is a final video, and it's a final audio of the last moments, and it has talking about the discussion. And in fact, I should have pointed that out and stuff. It's probably one of the most important ones as well, because you can tell all the stuff that he's told these people, along the way. So literally, he's telling them that America's this fascist place and we need to go to some kind of utopia, some socialist utopia. I'm not bringing in any kind of politics. I'm just stating what he was telling people. And an older black woman is in the background. This is in the conversation they're having right before they have everyone start drinking. And the older black woman says, "Well, can we, you said we can maybe go to Russia. Have you talked to Russia to see if we can go there?" And I thought, wow, the stuff he was feeding these people, that, we're going to get a homeland in Russia. And it's ironic because...
That's like the Cold War era as well.
Yeah, we're right in the middle. But see, I think that it was one of those situations of the enemy, whoever the enemy is, what they call it, the enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Yeah.
So, so thinking that, but it's funny how, there's a lot of people now in America who are trying to go to Russia. They want to live in Russia. They want to... do you have hopes to live in a I think because it represents this new, strong, force. I can see this alpha, going into the world. I can understand that. But to tell you the truth, most of us, in my opinion, if you live in the Western world, and I'm very much, that's the only experience I know. Personally, I like the choices and options are presented. Because the things, let's keep it real, a lot of things we complain about, which we have every right to, that is our legal, and human right to do so. But let's keep it real. In places like Russia, you're not going to be complaining about it. The Russian government. Or the Russians might start complaining about you, and that's when you disappear or something. It doesn't, that's a place that doesn't play. Just look at all the, the spy versus spy stuff and, just...
I wouldn't say I believe everything that they say about Russia.
I'm not here to say that. What I am saying is that I know that Russia is not playing. It may be a little guy. In comparison to the United States, I think it would have the economic power of like one state, like California or something.
Wow.
You're talking about 49 other states, So California's big, it produces a lot. But that's just one, So the thing that makes it undeniable power is its nuclear arsenal. That has, that has around the world. And the fact that it got probably that it has a super duper spy service. Obviously, the leader of the country himself was a product of that. He was a KGB
of course,
officer. So
and it was part of the shift, wasn't it, from the Soviets?
You know what I'm saying? And so
I remember growing up playing Street Fighter, and it wasn't Russia, it was USSR.
Yeah,
on the flag.
Right.
And I remember the shift, thinking, what, the country just changed its name? What's going on?
Right.
So, a lot of history there, isn't there? So
I agree with that. I mean, in my opinion, I was in my early teens when the whole Cold War ended. You know what I'm saying? And to tell you the truth, I think by the 90s, America wasn't even in the 80s without a doubt. I mean, people were thinking, we're going to end the world.
All the Hollywood movies was America versus Russian terrorists, wasn't it?
But I mean, think about it. I remember in the early 80s when I was a kid, they had the Mad Max films and the Thunderdomes and everything was like a post-apocalyptic. What could happen? There was another film called The Manhattan Experiment where it was a kid that accidentally created, nuclear weapon. What was that one? It was another movie where a kid actually created a nuclear weapon and was trying to, I think, tell, the U.S. government that if I can do that, it's going to eventually, anybody can do that. So what's the point of having a nuclear weapon? I mean, there was some 80s kind of, I love it. I'm not going to lie to you. I love the hopeful stuff.
Yeah,
the kind of pie in the sky
I do love the 80s movies.
I'm telling you, man, if you didn't live in the 80s, you didn't live, man. I'm telling you, this was, I think, when the world began like we understand it today. You know what I'm saying? Where everything, even though I think I can see how that put people off because the constant, media and constant, 24-hour news and what the celebrity is doing and this is you should eat and this is the way your body. I mean, I think it was the 80s that began at least the version of the world that we would understand clearly now. I think before that, it was a severing of, people, they relatively stayed, close to where they were, knew people they knew, worked in jobs that the parents did, mother stayed at home. Children, you know what I'm saying?
The rise of like satellite cable.
Yeah, I'm saying everything changed instantaneously because, and I saw that in the beginning. I remember Mike Tyson back in 86 doing his, 85, 86, doing his first pay-per-view fight, right? He knocked the dude out so fast and like 3 punches, pop, pop, pop. That I remember, my mom was on the phone telling the, cable, she want her money back. There wasn't a fight, you know what I'm saying? It was like
you feel robbed.
Exactly. I mean, that was before it was cool. See, I think when you're watching it like on a highlights reel on YouTube, it's funny when you see a guy and he knocks somebody out. It's not cool when you paid, 30, 40, plus whatever to watch something and it lasts about 5 seconds. And you're just like, man, come on. Was this guy ready? But yeah, I mean, I'm just saying it's a lot of experiences I want to share. I don't know if a lot of people have heard the story of, just a story of like any American, maybe who lives here. And as I reflect, because I'm heading in my 40s, if not already there, and then just reflecting on my life and seeing that obviously the world has changed. And because I saw it, I became an adult right when the internet. I think the internet officially came out. Obviously, there were several different versions of it, but I think about 1995, the version of the internet we understand, the World Wide Web, that is when it became accessible to a lot of people.
Dial-up connections.
So, exactly. So
I mean, these people today don't realize the struggles.
Yeah, that would have been. And, I had the privilege that I started.
The modem dialing.
Do you remember it, though?
Yeah. I remember the sound. I remember it taking 5 minutes to connect to the...
Now think about this. I was the dude on the phone trying to help you get that connected. And once again, this is before there was a lot of like mobile phones and cell phones. So I was a guy trying to tell people, give you these long, elaborate instructions, and then have you get off the phone and go do that to the computer. And it was an adventure because the internet was like a secret code. Nobody knew exactly what it was.
Yeah,
I think it would be until another 10 years later, about the mid 2000s, definitely by when mobile internet came out. That's when I think that when people found how they could utilize it. It wasn't just something you did at home in the corner when you can get the dial-up connection to work or the broadband, connection to maybe give you a bit of, now it was everywhere you went. So, yeah.
I remember being young playing video games on a computer and thinking, it'd be great to just be able to play this in bed on a little screen.
Right.
And then there we are. Technology's just rapidly advanced, hasn't it?
Man,
when you, I think there's some law, I can't remember the name of it now, where the technology advances or doubles every so many years, and then that gets quicker as the years go on. I'm looking forward another 20 years, and it's like, wow.
Are you ready for that, though? We talked about that. You know what I'm saying? Are people ready for that technology? Some people will.
Like you say, it just depends whose hands it ends up in.
I think whatever the technology, if it gives the user the individual, the ability to do it themselves, the control. If you're having to go someplace, I mean, because that's quite an expense. Let's say you wanted to change the way your face looked. You have to go some other place in many ways and have a person who's trained in that technique, and look at all the obstacles. We've had technology that instantly scans your face and did exactly what you wanted to do. If you got brown eyes, but I want to have blue eyes right now. There you go. You know what I'm saying? And it instantaneously changes something about you, maybe even more intimately, So I think that if it becomes something like that, it may be irresistible to our people. No doubt. It won't be. But like I said...
we're from the pre-sort of tech generation, so we'll be the guys like, we need to save our humanity.
I agree. I guess because before I was an adult as the technology hit.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to lie to you, from that day going forward, I think that if I would have definitely been in the times we are today, yelling the same mantras that everybody else. But in reflection now that I'm older, I can see what's productive and what is unproductive. What's noble, but at the end of the day, it's probably not something that most humans can achieve. So what's that middle ground? You know what I'm saying? Where can I find people, or how can I conduct myself in a way that, that allows other people to not just treat me as a human and we all, give each other a kiss on the cheek or something, but just like, look, I understand completely what you're going through. Well, and you understand what I'm going through. You don't have to trust me. I really don't have to trust you. We're going to at least act decently towards each other in the public arena. And I think in the 80s, when I was growing up, there was that kind of agreement that, look, whatever I say in my own house is my own house, and whatever opinion I have of you. But when we come to the public arena, the public sphere, I'm going to act in a decent manner, and you're going to do the same thing for me. Personally, I may not like you, or your race, or your religion, or the gender that you are, or the way you speak. But I'm going to keep that to myself because I expect you to do the same. And I think the problem with the internet, it released everything.
Yeah, people just say what they want now, don't they? Don't hold back. Just
let's keep
behind a synonym or a fake name,
Right. That's part of the temptation of Trump. He literally says anything he wants to. How many people would love to say what they want, do what they want, and there'd be no repercussions?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
That's power, isn't
it? Here's how powerful the man is. Here's how powerful the president of the United States is. Yesterday, he was saying that if it be possible that someone tries to bring up any kind of laws or take him to court for anything, as president, he decided to go ahead and pardon himself. Did you just hear this?
No.
Listen to it, and anybody who's listened to it, a couple of days ago, not only is he going to pardon himself, he's going to pardon his family and all the people that he hired to work with him, because he believes that after his presidency ends, that he's going to be hit with all kinds of legislation, rules that he broke and things like that. But the only reason they couldn't touch him because he's the current president of the United States. You can't arrest the man because he's the president. You have to actually stop him from being the president. That's why I think a lot of people looked at his situation and thought, there's a lot of other people who do the same thing in a lot of other countries. They cling to power, because they know that the moment they step down.
Yeah.
So, think about it, is that I was going back to what the other power that Trump has is the ability to give people the permission. You have the permission to say, fuck you, what I'm saying, to all the changes in the world, to all the things that's happening, what I'm saying, for all the things that, that haven't happened. Yeah. All the things that, that should have been. Basically, he's, you can put two fingers up, you can put a middle finger up, and it feels good. Why wouldn't it? You know what I'm saying? I can understand that completely.
Well, I think he was very clever, in his campaign, in what he said. And there was a genuine concern of the American people. And he seemed to play on that. And has he done half of the things that he said? Do any of them? But I'm not asking your opinion.
But you make a good point, because one of the things that I think people have an argument with, they believe that people who are not like them don't love America, or they don't love Britain, or they don't love living in the Western world.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? Now, I'm not going to say that I don't have a criticism. By default, I'm the result of, so many different dynamics that I agree on the surface could make a person feel. We were talking about, I love Sir Marcus. This is him, but obviously the name I was born with directly is related to, not too distantly, from the person who formerly owned one of my family members. So we actually are carrying the last name of the very last person who happened to own the very last people who were slave in my lineage.
Wow.
And that's almost every other black person I know in America. That's why we have names like Johnson, Jackson. You know what I'm saying? These are not, we obviously are not from these places. We're not from Ireland. We're not from Scotland or from England. We don't have this lineage of names So we are walking around with them. Now, I can feel bad about that. At one end, I'm gonna be honest, having lived in Britain, it actually, my legal name, it actually benefited me. It's very easy to pronounce. It's very, you know what I'm saying? It could be American, it could be Scottish, it could be English, it fits in very well. So the benefit of that is that I don't have the difficulty of someone not being able to pronounce my name, which can cause and create a barrier. The moment they're able to say your name or the name is familiar, then it creates an instantaneous dialogue, you know what I'm saying, you can have with somebody. So I see that as a benefit. Where it came from, of course, I'm never happy about.
No, of course not.
But
No.
but what can I do? And the dilemma that a lot of people like myself are in is that, okay, we can change our name, but change it to what? And that's where the oddity of these names start coming up. Names that don't, they have no,
Yeah,
you know
I
what
think
I'm
you
saying?
said on the
We were
last
talking
episode.
about that, because it's an attempt to reinvent with what we have, you know what I'm saying? Because we're all black people. If anybody who doesn't know, obviously I'm a black man from America who having lived more than a decade here in Britain. But I was like, even though we are, an African descendant of African people, we're not actually Africans. Even Africans don't see us as African.
Yeah.
Because culturally, we don't have the same mentality. We have a different culture fundamentally. And I think we're probably one of the most, in my opinion, one of the most more familiar black experiences because of America. Because of course you've probably seen TV shows, music videos, actors, content, films, singers, what I used to call them when I was a young kid. I'm glad we kind of moved away from that. The RGSD, running, jumping, singing, and dancing. You know what I'm saying? So that used to be a context that we were only put in. That was the context that we were in. So in my lifetime, that changed dramatically. You know what I'm saying? So for instance, when I was a kid, the most popular show on TV was The Cosby Show. It was a fictional, family where the father was a doctor, the mother was a lawyer. The children were all going to university, and they lived in a big 2-story, bedroom house. And this was the early 80s. I think this gave a view of like people in general that a lot of people basically didn't see. They always see as maybe as struggling or in difficult situations or in need, or feeling, or the oppressed. Whereas in this depiction, I don't know if did you ever see the show The Cosby Show? It's famous.
Vaguely, yeah.
You're probably vaguely familiar with the man. He was extremely famous amongst the black community. He had another show called, it's ironic, called Fat Albert. You know what I'm saying? This was an old cartoon, but it was based like in inner cities. And I remember one in particular, and I'm jumping all over the place, but I just want to tell you, this is where when I was a young child, this man, adult man, used to kind of host a show of cartoon characters that were in basically the hood, 60s and 70s and early 80s. And a little boy was playing hide and seek with his young brother and had decided to hide inside a abandoned refrigerator. And the refrigerator tipped forward. Oof. So he couldn't get out, you know what I'm saying? So his brother went looking for him and had decided, I think we'll go home. And then he remembered seeing the episode about kids who had played around like the junk and had gotten caught. So in that case, in the cartoon, a little boy had crawled into like I think it was a washer and dryer or a dishwasher, and then came trapped inside of it. And that was the moral of the story. So Bill Cosby would create these stories, these like dilemmas that would happen, and then he would tell the moral of the story is be watchful of your environment. Look out for things, you know what I'm saying? So he found his little brother had, passed out inside this refrigerator. And he quoted that, and I thought, yes. And once that story took hold in the early 80s, it positioned the man who, Bill Cosby, as a kind of an educator, and I had to say it, because it's so many experiences. And it went beyond the color of his flesh. He became a father figure. In fact, today, he's still considered the most popular fictional father figure in America. I mean, probably the most familiar. Like I said, going back to my life, this is the experience I had when I was growing up. This was the number one guy. Michael Jackson had just come out with Thriller. Prince, was another entertainer. Becomes
Eddie Murphy.
I was gonna say Eddie Murphy's. I mean, Mr. T. You know what I'm saying? He was. I don't know if you remember Mr. T.
Oh yeah.
he was mega popular when I was a kid. And the thing about it, he crossed all kinds of boundaries. He was actually a motivator. You know what I'm saying? So he would go to schools and he would go to. He didn't go to he'd go to schools and like kids, and he would go like to prisons as well. So he got mass respect across. He wasn't just an entertainer. You know what I'm saying? Or just an actor. But yeah. All these people were like, Muhammad Ali. I'm trying to think. Michael Jordan, you know what I'm saying? So all these people in the mid-'80s, when I was just becoming, a young boy, were all icons, and people looked up to them. You know what I'm saying? And so, and then by
showing you that anything's possible.
By extension, they saw me. Like I say, because before they'd only saw, well, you'll probably only accomplish this in life. But then they saw, I'm gonna be honest, just going back to that Bill Cosby thing, in many ways, he was more important than Barack Obama because he was a father figure. He was seen as a modern day, the modern day embodiment of the American father figure. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's a lot to put it, especially when America was all about image. It was showing that image to like the Soviet Union, to the rest of the world. This is what we are compared to that place.
Yeah, of course.
So everything was a whole bunch of reflection. So I remember my teacher bringing it up, I wonder how that looked to Russians who were like getting little snippets of American TV, that there's black people on the TV show and it's funny, it's good. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because in their, society, I probably don't even exist. They probably haven't even seen black people before.
Yeah.
And that goes into a whole nother situation. But let's say, get it back, I think, to the core of this is we were talking about my mother and being involved. Obviously, it carries on into my own life. Her needing documentation for me stopped her from making a dramatic life choice that, could have brought the end of myself and her. And had all kinds of, ramifications, with our own family, things that didn't, because once again, she left, having, like a lot of children do, and maybe a lot of people who are listening, maybe not have a close connection with their parents. And so what it created was, if that, she had come to the conclusion out there in the middle of the jungle, she would never have, be able to, communicate that, that she admitted her mistakes, that, the family still loved them and they, had made mistakes in what they said to her, things that they created. And I was embraced, what I'm saying, as well, because they knew all that had happened. It's all on the news. So I was re-embraced into my family, maybe even more so.
It was envisioned as, like you said, it's some kind of utopia, wasn't it?
Exactly.
A fresh start and a new way of life.
And you couldn't blame people, for, trying to pursue that. And that's, I think, why I wanted to make sure you're not, if you can, when
if it seems too good to be true.
You know what I'm saying? It is. No doubt. You know what I'm saying? If somebody's saying exactly what you've always said, that's maybe the time you need to be the most cautious.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because we can't help that, because that's, as human beings, we respond to it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
When somebody has that mutual, when they're shaking their head in agreement in what you just said, you realize you're on the same wavelength.
Yeah.
That's intoxicating.
I've seen it firsthand prior to 2012. I know we talked about this before, but around 07, 08 through to probably about 2010, I used to frequent this chat thing called Pal Talk, and there's various different rooms in there.
I remember that.
Yeah, with people.
Is that still around?
It is, yeah, and there's various different rooms with people talking about social issues and politics and conspiracies and different kind of things. And there was a room dedicated to 2012, like Doomsday 2012, I think it was called. And
I remember this, you telling me.
Yeah, I was in there for years, like I say. And
looking for a slave, man.
Used to have some really good conversations with people. People would take turns on the microphone, share information and stuff like that.
Could you video chat as well?
You could, but I think you had to upgrade to actually use the webcams or something like that. Most of us didn't, just use the audio and text.
I thought there was another one called Frog. No, it wasn't that. No, it was Power Chat.
There was a guy that appeared on there probably about a year or two into it, just coming up to 2012, called Terrell from over in the States. He was basically telling people that God himself told him that this 2012 event is definitely the end.
Right.
And over time, he was grooming people to go out and live in the Ozarks.
Right.
And he said he was making this like almost utopia off the grid, and it'd be totally safe. And he was talking about the topography of the land and how it's above sea level and how there's caves and how there's this and that.
It was basically a cave, huh?
No matter what happened, they would be safe, kind of thing. And I seen people, I was there for years of them conversations in the chat group, and people are selling their houses, selling everything they own to go right across the country to go to the Ozarks.
Right.
And it got to the point where somebody actually went out there, they'd sold everything, they packed up the truck, they drove to the Ozarks, they went to this supposed meeting spot where he was, He wasn't even there.
Right.
It was all a setup. He'd been taking donations, funding. He used to tell people in the private emails and chats that he used to have off-pal talk with people that, yeah, we need this money for this, for that, the other. But don't worry, when you come here, everything's going to be, everything's going to be kosher and you're going to be safe. It was just to get money off people, basically.
Right.
And he was putting out so much information about earth changes and patterns in earthquakes at the time, and he was showing all these very convincible signs of the end times. And like I say, we're talking about 2008 through to 2010. So even back then, and I've documented it on my channel over the years that every year it's the end of the world. There's a big asteroid coming. Planet X is coming back. It's this, it's that. And you do get these cults, like you were saying, that latch onto it.
Right.
And, there's also opportunists around them movements as well that make money off survival stuff and all the products that go with it.
Just to add this, I don't think a lot of people know this, but the most popular cult is the cult of two. You know what I'm saying? So it's that one person who has control over the other person. That's it. You know what I'm saying? They need no more other control. You know what I'm saying? And it's so intense that you may not even realize that it's there. And so I was hearing that, because you know how difficult it is to handle, you know what I'm saying, the mentality of multiple individuals. When typically a cult leader, what he does, he starts with one individual. And see, he turns that individual, what he called the first follower. And in fact, I think there's a little YouTube video about the first follower. In fact, I'm going to just look it up right now, just so I can have a context to talk to you about. Here we go, yeah. The famous YouTube video with a gentleman named Derek Sivers, and it says, How to Start a Movement. And it actually goes through, it's about 3 minutes. It's only about 3 minutes long, but it shows a man basically dancing at this this festival, right? And it's just him by himself. So he's out there doing it, and then somebody else comes behind him and starts dancing. So he shows him physically how to do the same thing he's doing, right? So he's waving his hands, he's kicking his legs, and making sure he does it, you know what I'm saying, in sequence with him. And then a third guy comes, and then a fourth guy comes, and then all of a sudden people just rush because they realized it was a new dynamic was happening, and they wanted to be there before. You know what I'm saying? If they got there early, then they looked like they were part of the in crowd. You know what I'm saying? But I'm just using actually his words. It's a very interesting thing about how the domino effect happens. But once somebody gets your attention, once somebody has said something that's touched you, you know what I'm saying? And then, you become, in many ways, their first follower. You know what I'm saying? To tell other people, look, this individual is saying something, until obviously they disappoint you and you find another person to follow. Isn't it ironic that we use social media that calls us followers? You know what I'm saying? Yeah. But I mean, like I said, if you want to check that out, once again, his name is Derek Sivers, and it's How to Start a Movement. It's a TED Talk, and it's only about 3 minutes long, but it gives you the domino effect that we all can fall into. Yeah. One thing I learned about cults is this: it's not the belief that makes it a cult. It's not how, because let's keep it real. If you took every belief system and you put it in the cold light of day, and without the, years of being informed about in the stories and the moralistic, thing about your religion. Like I was telling you earlier today about I went to an evangelical church once, and like my mother once again had came from a Christian background, but there was this church that was picking up a lot of young, mostly impoverished kids. I wouldn't say I was that impoverished, but they were coming around and seeing if they wanted to go to Sunday school in this little church. It was around the corner, so they had a little bus picking up everybody. And it was actually quite beautiful, you know what I'm saying? Because we went there and they gave us lunches. They gave, not too dissimilar from the actual cult. I mean, how religion can be in many ways the same. I think it can't be avoidable because, once again, cults are just someone who has their own objective on top of a belief system or a philosophy, or they have their own, greedy intentions. But so we went there, and it was nothing bad about this. It's not a cult. It's just saying that it was without the proper indoctrination to tell me what this meant. So I remember after my Sunday school was over, and I was getting ready to get back on the bus to go home. There was a group of young teens, and there was a preacher. He was enthusiastic. He was like, "Are you covered?" He said, "Are you covered in the blood? Are you covered in the blood?" I got covered in the blood. Like I said, I was only maybe about 7 or 8, and I didn't understand the context of what he's trying to. Now, what it is, it's a very religious reference, especially if you're evangelical. Jesus represents a kind of sacrificial lamb. So the blood of that would be the thing that washes away or covers the sins. So but they were using symbolic without giving the but just hearing it, I thought, what? Are they vampires in this? I mean, what am I?
At 8 years old, that resonated. Something was wrong, didn't it?
So I just thought, I'm just saying this is what the situation was wrong. It was just not the clarity. But what I'm saying is that's how easy it is. I mean, but I remember going home and asking my mother, they like blood. I don't know. And she was like, yeah, of course. That's the blood. And when she told me, I thought, oh, okay, I get it. But if you ever, you know what I'm saying? So it's good to inquire to ask questions, you know what I'm saying? Because the first thing I did, and my mother asked me how it was. I thought it was good. You know, we had nice sandwiches, you know, and we sang songs. And I was just like, and they like blood.
Yeah.
And she was just like, oh, huh? And it didn't clarify it for me. But like I said,
you know, there's a lot of ritualistic things, isn't there?
About everybody's culture. So I think the moral story is ask questions.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Not just about people who, you know what I'm saying, maybe people you consider to be maybe trustworthy or somebody who's a third party. And just look at this for a second, because I hate to say it, our gut instinct is powerful, but it also, you know what I'm saying, it is your gut, you know what I'm saying? And what comes out of your gut, I mean, shit. So, the result is that you have to be careful what you put in there, you know, to be digested. But, you know, we have a lot of things we could have talked about, I think, with cults. Maybe, you know, I send some people to do their own research. But I don't, if you want to talk about it more, you know, we can go on. But you know what? I had a conversation about the first cult. I mean, I didn't have any control of that one. The second one was a little bit more interesting. I don't know if you want to have that conversation.
Go ahead, yeah.
So this is something I encountered. Now, this is back where, you know, I'm living back in the South. This cult had begun with a gentleman who came back from the Korean War. So the Korean War was back in the late, I think the British and Americans were both in that, you know, at the same time. Yeah, I'm certain of that. And this was like the late 50s. So it was after World War II. And he came back wounded, you know, like in his, you know, genitalia area. So he wasn't able to like do so. But what this did, it brought about this, in my opinion, a very parental. I think, in fact, most cultists have a kind of parental, you know, position they put themselves in. But this is the story how I remember it. Now this is, I can't say that we were part of the cult, but we were in the periphery of it, meaning that we were, you know what I'm saying, we knew people who were part of it and the intensity. And it took a certain kind of circumstance. You just couldn't be an individual. Some cults are just open to everybody. Everybody come. We need, you know what I'm saying? And it will filter out the people later, you know, as to what we want. But this one has very specific type of individual. And this was also through a church, but it was this guy who was helping women who had been, this once again is the 80s, mid-80s. And we're talking about obviously prostitution, but AIDS was, you know, very big, and crack cocaine had hit at the same time in the Black community as well. I hate to keep mentioning something and then have to explain, but the crack cocaine hit Black America very hard. I mean, it hit the world. I don't know how it hit Britain, but it hit us in particular because it was cheaply made and we were flooded by it. And this was a mystery into the 90s, and we found out.
Yeah, I've covered quite a bit of this.
Right. Have you ever heard of the Iran-Contra? You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. You know what I'm saying? This is where it leads into...
There's a few documentaries on my brand new YouTube channel about
No doubt.
it.
And this is where it gets us involved, because here it is, our own nation flooded us with this highly addictive product so that the monies could go down to South America and Iran.
Used for black ops and stuff.
Exactly.
Yep.
So we got used, but only that, they increased the laws and made it even worse upon people. And because it was a mystery as to how these people will be, I mean, very... very decent people, you know what I'm saying? People who went to, you know, they worked, bus drivers, nurses, police officers. All of a sudden they would take just one hit, you know, like you would if you had some weed or something. Somebody take, and instantaneously be, you know what I'm saying, be craving and stuff. It was beyond like any other drug. You know, before you had the injected, or you had to, you know what I'm saying, you knew if you were doing heroin or that, you knew what you were doing. But this one, it just came out of the blue with people.
Yeah.
And it transformed them into something almost, you know what I'm saying? I mean,
yeah, I've heard the stories from the real Rick Ross and how the CIA was. Yeah.
And the thing about it, it's heartbreaking. I mean, I remember in particular, I mean, I keep deviating, but I just, when I get on this track, I got to say something. I remember when I was in, once again, this is the 80s, so I lived at the whole of the 80s, and I remember we used to go, we were in elementary school from the ages of about 6 till about 12, I went down the same road with the same bus. You know what I'm saying? You probably did the same thing, same routine. This was a major road that first curved into the city and then out of it so it could go to my local school. And on this road in particular, it started off as being just a handful of prostitutes. You see that in the inner city. And then it started being people who were just selling drugs. And then the people who were stopped off to, go pick up drugs. And it wasn't unusual that you saw a car that was stopped there, wait for, a drug dealer to sell them crack, and then be at the school not 15 minutes later. Wow. They came and picked up, right before with the kids in the car. And this, what I'm saying, it was crazy how it hit us. And so and then, like I said, they increased the drug laws, so the things were severe, lifetime, what I'm saying, or decades.
And that's when all the gang murders started.
I mean, it had all kinds of ramifications and stuff. I'm gonna be in different parts of America. You mentioned about what do you mean about the gangs? Clarify that just so I can maybe add on to that story. Do you know what you're talking about, or?
Well, yeah, just the trade wars, for areas and
exactly. I mean,
control and
increased
stuff.
that, but also what made it worse is that it took away the drug, the long term, took away like the old school. So they had the old school gangsters who were not about shooting up the whole neighborhood.
Yeah.
But because they got caught in some kind of drug situation and now they're doing 30, 40, 50 years, what I'm saying, for something that today would probably, maybe a year or two, what I'm saying? And then also they look at the intention of the person.
It took it to that next level, didn't it?
But they made it so severe because they thought but it was intentional. I couldn't help but help my people intentionally set up. Intentionally set up to be the fall guy, to create monies, to do operations they had nothing to do with. But they got the ramifications and the bad reputation of being, the drug dealers, who themselves are predators, the drug users who themselves sometimes can become predators, trying to get the monies they need. It turned everybody into the worst situation. I didn't know what to think about that. As a young, I didn't know, what do you do when your own country turns on the most vulnerable, not in just general way, or not even in some distant past, but in your lifetime, and you see it. I mean, as a kid, I saw it go from a handful of people stopping off in the morning to get drugs, to a lot of people who had children in their cars go get drugs, then drop off their kids, and then go to do what they need to do. I just thought this was, and it became normal in some ways. You know what I'm saying?
People would argue that was part of an elitist plan as well to cripple Black America.
No doubt. I'm just saying, I hate to say it, but I don't hold anybody else more to blame than really ourselves, because we knew almost immediately the damage that it was doing. This was unlike any other drug. It almost immediately reduced people to like a kind of ghoul. I mean, I remember one woman who had once babysitted me, probably when I was about 7 or 8, but when I was about 10, I mean, she was walking down the street and scratching her neck and the hair was all frizzled out. And, you know what I'm saying? I just thought, this woman used to, it was a lot of people like that. You know what I'm saying? Just, you could tell they had lived a street life, had done whatever they could to get their next fix. And it was just heartbreaking because there's nothing you could do to tell them, because they had, what I'm saying? I think some drugs, in particular crack cocaine, when it touches you, some people are more susceptible. Some people are like, yeah, it was what it was. I'm not an experience I want to repeat. Or it was good, but, but some people instantaneously, it fits right on top of food, shelter, and clothing, and breathing. High priority. Yeah. And it hit,
It's such a shame. I mean, we can still see the effects of it today. And I really do think there needs to be an end to this war on drugs, because it's not actually worked and it's actually created more of a problem. This whole black market thing, it's unbelievable. I think if they controlled it and said to people, oh, you want to take crack, you want to take heroin, here, come to this centre, we'll give it you. You don't need to go out and rob somebody. And then, it eventually will cripple the black market, and then the gangsters and dealers, they won't be able to make money off it. And that's the way it should be. I mean,
ironic.
If you want to destroy your body, then go and take it. Here, we'll give it you. But at the end of the day, by criminalising them and putting them in this state of dependence on these drug deals and stuff,
right?
It's just a never-ending cycle. It's getting worse and worse and worse and worse.
What's
and it makes you wonder why. Sorry, I
go ahead,
there, but it makes you wonder why. But the more you listen to these true crime podcasts and things like that, the whole prison industrial complex is a business.
Man, I didn't want to get into it, but unfortunately, we become its greatest, customers. If you're a Black American,
it's almost like they want that crime to keep going, because
no doubt.
Without it,
when I was a kid, I was telling you this earlier about, I think from the other conversation, we briefly touched on it, where this organization called the Salvation Army had taken me and a group of other young kids, young mostly Black and Latino kids, out to to have summer camp. It was actually the most fantastic experience I ever had. I mean, even to this day, I remember learning and the camaraderie, that happened, and then the after effect, what happened after when we were coming home. That was the real intention of this whole experience. And I remember the bus driver had pulled us to the side and to the side of the road, and he pointed to this prison complex. And we were in a place called Sugarland, Texas. I'm just kind of going over the story I told previously. And he told us that a great many of the people who are in there right now, right now, those men who have been there before your father was born, and they're making room for you. This is the second part that I didn't understand, I would understand later, that by the time you turn 16 in the state that I was in, you would be recorded. Your race would be recorded. Your, obviously your, your age and a lot of other factors. And what they would use is that demographic of like the census of that information, except they did this on a yearly basis. So they knew who was turning 16 when. You officially became part of the future perspective of capacity in the prison system in the state that I was in. They took your race, took a part of that, and factored it in to the capacity they would need in the future. So we were already predestined to mean that unless we made specific choices not to do so. And there was a commercial and economic motivation for them to have us. So in many ways, it's funny how they didn't want us to be breaking any laws, be a decent citizen. But if you did, we're going to make money off of you. Anyway, we're going to either make money off of you paying your taxes, or we're going to make money off of you putting you in a box. And I think...
And this system isn't designed to actually rehabilitate people,
No, it's pure punishment.
It just gets you straight back in there.
That's why it was supposed to be introduced. Prisons in America, in my opinion, are not used for the purpose of rehabilitating. They want to scare the shit out of you. In fact, they want to scare before you even get in there. And they even tell you. I remember later on, we had this guy who came in to try to do a little scare straight. And he was telling you, if I can be plain, he was like, yeah, when I get you in there, I'm gonna look at you. I'm gonna look at your ass, and I might just sell you to, because if I don't want you, maybe I'll sell you to somebody else. But what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna break you in first, and maybe sell you for a pack of cigarettes. And he was just telling us what's gonna happen, no matter how strong you thought you were on the street. And in fact, because you think you're strong, I'm gonna purposely break you. It ain't got nothing to do about me being a homosexual or even like I did it because I can do it. I have the power to do it over you. And that's when I started hearing things like that. I thought, that is a place I never want to go.
Yeah.
So I made every intention, that I realized if that was going to be resolved, not me. Yeah. So I agree. It did give me the motivation to know that I would already be inclined to be put in such place. Later on, my mother would, many years later, my mother would date this bailiff, and I think I may have touched this as well. A bailiff in the U.S. is an officer of the court. So he's the person who's standing beside the judge. He brings in the defendants, the people who are being judged by. He's also kind of bodyguard, just in case they jump over the table or act a fool. I mean, this is America, right? This is America. So she dated him, and he told her this bit of advice that you can be a surrogate for somebody else's crime, meaning that, so if the police, they can't find anybody else, they would rather go ahead and put it on you, because when the case is closed by the judge, it just wraps up everything. It takes your name off, it takes the number off the books. Of course, they have to deal with you, and the family gets a kind of closure. Yeah. And it's not until weeks, months, years, tens of years later that maybe the person who was the victim and says, you know what, that person wasn't the individual who did that to me.
Or when advances in DNA technology.
Exactly, you know what I'm saying? Or as you said before, but it's been unusual that they lost because like I said, this may have been decades ago. They lost the stuff. But the person, somebody else may have may have confessed to the crime. And yet it's taking 10 years for them to go ahead and go through the motion. Even the person who was the victim says, no, I'm almost guaranteed that wasn't the person. The reason I say that is because my parents, the police, the judge, everybody just said, just wrap this up, because we're probably not going to be able to find this. Yeah. So you can be a surrogate. You can stand in, because the way they saw it, and I remember him putting it like this, the way they saw it like this, that maybe you didn't do this crime, but you did something. So you just didn't get caught. So they're going to put it on, they're going to place it on you, not because they don't like you. Maybe because, like I say, they believe that you probably did something or will do something,
Yeah. So just take you out of the game first.
Exactly. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's just, It's just a matter of percentages. You're probably going to be one of those percentages of people who will do something. So to tell you the truth, we're just going to take you out of the system and put you in something else that we still going to earn money from. And,
It's crazy.
Do you know?
I think, is that not why they abolished the death penalty in some states as well?
I wouldn't say abolished, they delayed it. You know what I'm saying? Because of these kind of rules. Because you know what I'm saying, what would have been maybe not a slap on the wrist, but something that would have, like for instance, you go to jail, but you also go to school. You get education, you get on a trade, or you know what I'm saying? It's building you to leave the facility and go back into productive life with avenues. The other one was just straight, hardcore, oh man. In the 90s, man, I'm going everywhere. But in
good.
In the 90s, right, in the early 90s, there was a lot of these guys who were getting out of like prisons. And so like during the 60s, the late 50s and 60s, there were a lot of protests. There were sit-ins about everything in general, against the war, against, you know what I'm saying, civil rights sit-in. But these particular sit-ins usually were mainly just by black students. And so what they would do is, after they had, sat in on and just to describe what a sit-in is, they would go into a public facility or, and they would sit down and say, because they refused to be served because of the color of their skin, they would sit down at a restaurant and just occupy a seat in protest until they were physically taken out by the police. They had to literally be taken out. That was part of the whole protest until people got so irritated that they said, you know what, I'll fucking sell you a meal, just you know what I'm saying? And it's funny that it had to be broke in like that, but a lot of those men went to jail. So not only that, a lot of them got caught in the protests where they were putting the water hoses and the dogs on them. I don't know if there's many of the protests that happened in the 60s where they were trying to discourage the students from coming out, building momentum. So they started putting dogs on them and they were showing them on videos, leaping at it. Well, some guys hit the dogs, you know what I'm saying? Or grab the dogs and wound up hitting the owner. And one of these guys, I think he had hit the police officer. The dog had bit him. I think he gouged out the dog. He did something to the dog's eye permanently, and then hit the man, the police officer, got 30 years in prison. Wow. So this was 1960. So by 1990, most of the people had forgotten about these protests. I mean, we knew about them. We knew that they set the pace for the life that I would know, really, I wouldn't say as of ease, but I'm just an average person. I'm just you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So even I talk about race, I when I was growing up, I consider myself just another individual. The racism was, not racism, talking about race was not the intensity that it is today and the toxicity that it was today. It was very casual, you know what I'm saying? What people were more concerned about is your behavior, how you conducted yourself in the world. But I mean, these dudes that were coming out of prison, this is 30 plus years earlier. So we even forgot about the marches and this is the thing that maybe Dr. Martin Luther King would have been part of, that kind of speech, if you know that individual. So he would have been part of that stuff, but he went to jail, and because he struck the officers back, they gave them these severe penalties, you know what I'm saying, to discourage people from doing it. But of course, the more people did it, the less likely they were giving these severe, but he was one of the first individuals who fought back. And we literally have forgot about him. And I felt so sad about that we didn't know who he was or what he had participated in and the sacrifice he had made of his whole life. Because he's in his late 50s. And the most traumatic thing about it was we were raising money to help him get breast reduction, because in prisons, what they did was they were feeding a lot of the men estrogen to stop them from building muscle, because they thought that would be less aggressive. So we interpreted it as they were trying to feminize. So if you listen to a lot of the,
I will say there's a lot of that going on in the world today, but that's another show.
But here's the thing about what we're saying is that there probably is something that's a little bit outside, but this was intentional and medical and didn't, you know what I'm saying, and it had no, it's not something that had been requested or even been advised.
Yeah.
But I know a lot of men who came out, they were getting breast reductions, you know what I'm saying, because they've been in there 10, 20, 30 years, and they had filtrated the food with estrogen or estrogen precursors. It being illegal. So to actually put something like that into a product without obviously notifying the individual that, is going to be eating this food. So the purpose of it was to obviously make sure that people, men was unmasculine as possible, to make them more manageable. Like I said, it is for profit. So the objective is to have as many of these people as you can on your service and, supposedly dealing the public, good. But like I said, it had all kinds of ramifications of it. It also, like I said, it put doubt when I would look at the country I was from, a lot of people, because maybe when they hear some of the difficulties of the country they come from or in the past, it doesn't really impact them. It doesn't really have like an emotional. But in fact, for them, it's just like, that's the past. So if I can deal with the past in that way, or, then you should be as well. But the past in many ways followed us because they knew that we were very susceptible. It's funny that we talk about vaccine. I mean, it's funny we were talking about things that are put in people's food. Vaccines is another thing. In Georgia, it's a state I'm very familiar with, next to a place called the Tuskegee, which was an airport. A lot of black men who came from what they call the Tuskegee Institute. It was I think it was vocational college. They went on to fly in World War II and to distinguishment. They were very, I think they fought over Germany as well, these black soldiers. But what in the town that these soldiers came from, there was another experiment. There was an experiment that was happening that was injecting these men who they thought were being treated for syphilis. But in reality, it would just be basically given sugar water. And they wanted to see what the effects of syphilis was over years, if not generations. You know what I'm saying? And so they didn't properly it started around the 20s, but it didn't, they didn't end the program until the early 70s. But by this time, all these men had lived untreated for a disease that had already found a cure.
Yeah.
So this is the thing that, really... that community in Georgia is protesting. They are not interested in taking, especially the older generation who probably remember what had happened. And so they're distrustful of anything, you know what I'm saying? Because they know there was a time where the U.S. government did experiment on people, not metaphorically, not kind of, sort of. They did. They wanted to see the long-term effects of diseases and how it degraded people, how it deformed them.
And they talk about chemtrails and stuff, and a lot of people say, conspiracy theories, chemtrails, that's ridiculous and stuff. But you go and look at their own data, their own publications, and they'll tell you, we did this experiment in 19 such and such.
Exactly.
We flew planes over, we sprayed this, we sprayed that, then we tested. You can go on back and look at this is what they've been doing for decades. So could there be some experiments like that going on now?
My own father came back from Vietnam, and one of the main things he was talking, like I said, it wasn't comfortable talking about Vietnam. Nobody wanted to hear that because it wasn't a victorious, thing. It wasn't be until like the mid 80s. They started making movies like Full Metal Jacket and Born on the 4th of July and Platoon. I know if you probably heard a lot of these, very famous movies.
Yeah, my uncle was in Vietnam as well.
Right. So it only became comfortable to really start talking about, in my opinion, in the 80s when I started seeing on mass media. But before that, it just wasn't a war. Like I said, when it came to let's keep it real, these people who went over there, especially the poor ones, they got it on both ends. From the ultra-liberals who mocked and ridiculed them and called them baby killers, to the ones who came back, who called, when they came back complaining or having mental health problems or medical problems because they sprayed all that stuff to deforest a lot of the jungles in Southeast Asia. And they sent those soldiers in immediately afterwards, and they breathed in all that stuff. They came back with all kinds of cancers. But like I said, the government didn't want to acknowledge that because that would be saying that, look, that was probably wrong on top of a lot of things that were wrong about, going into the country. So
you fast forward a couple of decades, you see the same thing happening over and over again. There's history repeating itself.
I agree.
And injustices taking place, and then your average person like me or you taking the flak for it because we are of a certain nationality of a country that was involved in something like that, where it's not our fault kind of thing.
It's our right to challenge. So, like I said, when it comes to people, I understand people being frustrated, people looking for answers. What seems to be, the answer to this conundrum that we're going through, and they start connecting the dots, which I think, that's what the human mind does. It looks for connections, it looks for parallels, It starts using comparison. That's how we figure things out. The only problem is that it's not taking it too far, but making sure that your emotions, being able to separate your emotion from the logic and reason. Okay, A plus B equals C, not A plus B equals Z or Z. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You already got to the bottom of the alphabet and disregarded everything else. You know what I'm saying? When it could be all those other possibilities. So I think that's just something that we all need to reflect upon. Even myself, like for instance, when I'm watching news, and I understand a lot of people, they watch particular news agencies that reflect, or at least content providers that reflect their thinking or their feeling on it. But me, I like to look at a wide variety. I don't really form an opinion. What I want to see is what is their posturing on on this one event. What is RT saying? You know what I'm saying? I know that's Russia Today. What's CNN saying? I know that's more American influence. What's
Fox News?
Fox News. That's
BBC.
the opposite. The BBC. Exactly.
Yeah.
Sky News Australia. I don't know if you ever seen that. They have a completely different.
I've been sharing quite a few of their things.
So I mean, I've seen that they have almost a complete opposite of the kind of very
Sky News Britain and Sky News Australia.
Two different places.
There's no contrast.
I look at all.
But that's not to say that they're not still owned by these big corporations and stuff.
They're just playing.
Just different agendas, isn't it?
They're playing. Come on, man. They're saying you owns the same corporation and is giving you a diet of what you want to hear. And I'm saying all news agencies do this. It's not something. They're all feeding.
Especially the Manchester Evening News. Yeah. I'm calling them out because they've been doing some awful things in this pandemic. Do you think they've been reporting your these marches you've been attending? You think they've been reporting them fairly? Have you read the reviews on it, or have you seen what they talked about? Yeah, I mean, there's been different articles because obviously there's different journalists who work for them. But the second to last protest, not the one yesterday, they tried to say on one of the reports that there was dozens of protesters.
Right.
But there was at least 5,000, And I think the report from the other day said there was 500 to 600, but there was at least 2,000-3,000,
Right.
Once the march started. But they always play it down because they don't want it to gain any traction. That's basically why they do it. And, they're working and serving an agenda at the end of the day. And there might be just normal people who work for them, but on a higher up level, they have strict regulatory controls, and there's like a press office that they have to put all their stories through to see if they're accepted, and they're allowed to put them out there. So I mean,
that's an odd question. So because of those mechanisms in place when it comes to like journalism, there's your reputation on the line if you don't get this information out adequately, obviously in feeding the audience. Yeah. So I kept thinking, what about these individuals who are putting out content, which is good. I mean, they putting out an alternative version of news, but who holds them accountable? I mean, you have the option or the choice to accept or not accept what they say. And we're on one of them right now. So we're having that conversation amongst people who, obviously looking for alternative appetite. Me, I want to give you maybe just an alternative conversation that really about me, and me living here in Britain.
Yeah.
What that experience is.
It's fascinating to hear this American stories as well, though, because I think a lot of us Brits don't really have the right perception. We see Hollywood and stuff like that and the media culture, but to actually hear real stories, to actually understand
the dynamics. And
and the mentality and the psychology as well.
But not only that, but to know what American would think about living in Britain. What I don't know if I have adequately conveyed that, but to tell you the truth, I think I appreciate Britain, and I'm not here to be its cheerleader or Manchester, but I do appreciate the fact that I've been here. I know that in the place that, I was from, I love, the South, love where I was raised, people, good people of every color there, who had, the best of intentions, A lot of people who steered me, in the right direction, who even didn't even know me personally, That was just like every culture, everybody knows when to step in when they see something going right or going wrong. So I was always appreciative of that. But in Britain, I knew that if the worst case scenario ever happened to me, that there's some mechanisms in place to at least look after. I'm gonna be honest. I mean, I've been to
a degree, though.
So, well, no, in comparison, I mean, I'm saying using America as the comparison. Go to any major city, L.A., New York, or even sometimes cities in the middle. That may not be as popular or well known. St. Louis, or obviously Chicago is very big, but other cities, and they have homelessness. I mean, not just homelessness, but homelessness in multiple generations. Like I told you, I was saying, it's not unusual to see the children, the mother, and the grandmother. And the grandmother walking by, behind the basket that the mother's pushing the other kids in with a diabetic leg, right?
Generational poverty, yeah.
And no obligation from the government, which is the richest in the history of the world. And, at least that's why it currently is advised. And the fact that it has its name as a standard currency by which all others are compared, because the moment that obviously gets taken away, then it's no longer America, really. Yeah. The moment that trophy is taken off of its shelf. But I don't know much. I'm going to be honest, I don't know much about that. I'm not really the person who's done that history. I'm going to go ahead and let Dr. Martin over here give you all the details. But for, like I said, from my experience, having seen that over there makes me more appreciative even of the problems that Britain has. They're nothing maybe compared to the place that I've come from. Or I know that if worst case something happens, I know that this place at least has an obligation America, that's not really the case. You know, if you didn't make it, it's kind of your fault. I mean, if you get sick, that's your fault. I mean, if you lose your job, it's your fault. I mean, you should have done everything you possibly could. So I mean,
life's tougher out there, isn't it?
I'm not saying
if you don't come from wealth and stuff.
I'm not saying it's easy anywhere, but I'm just saying there's things in place that if you fail, for instance, if you go to jail here in Britain, I don't really know anything about the legal system here, but I see that they have at least a possibility of you kind of moving out of that. There's programs, you can admit, you know, that, hey, I do have a criminal record, but it's not as bad as this, and so it should still allow me. Once you get a criminal record in the U.S., that's over, man. Even places like McDonald's don't even have an obligation to hire you. You know what I'm saying?
So once you go down that path,
that's
you're trapped in that world, aren't you?
Some companies, they have what they call it's an at-will employer. So what it means, they have the will to let you go at any time they want to. And for insurance purposes, they want to be able to say everybody we employ does not have a criminal record. You know, for insurance, you know, the insurance premiums are low because of that. They start letting people who have criminal record, then it leaves them susceptible. This is where the money comes in at when it starts affecting people's life. That's why my mother was telling me, you know, the consequences of you winding up here is not just in there. And that's where it began to evolve, you know what I'm saying? Knowing it's not just a building and losing one's life, is that even after all that, even after that man served 30 plus years, you know, I'm saying about who had the breast reduction.
Yeah.
Couldn't, you know what I'm saying, couldn't have a driver's license, couldn't get credit, couldn't, you know, get a place to stay because he had a criminal record, couldn't get a job. You know what I'm saying? It just created all these domino effects that he couldn't do anything, so which almost would point him right back into the very direction he was coming out from. I kept thinking, why?
It leaves a lot of people no choice, doesn't it?
I mean, it's not right. I'm just saying is that, but and that was communicated as well. That the ramifications of what you do won't just be a punishment now, but it'll be a punishment of everybody you know and love. You know what I'm saying? It'll take money, it'll take time, it'll take you away. So it was literally you making you dread going. You know what I'm saying? So basically not doing anything. You know what I'm saying? Or at least not doing something that would put you in a position for them to put their hands on you.
But then if you did, you'd probably take it to the next level because you don't want to get caught.
I mean, I agree. When we're talking about people who...
It's probably put the murder rates up just because of that as well.
Just the desperation of people, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think the justice system's really set up in a fair and just way, to be honest, and it really doesn't rehabilitate people in the way that it should. It just further leads them down a life of crime, unfortunately.
I don't think it totally addresses the fact that people couldn't have mental health challenges. You know what I'm saying? The mind in this kind of society, I mean, and maybe in the past and stuff, the world was pretty simplistic, you know, in its way. It was rough, you know what I'm saying? It was intense, but it was probably routine. What you did yesterday is what you're going to do today, what you're going to do until your last day.
Yeah.
So your last day. So, I mean...
even we're hearing a lot of stories from prisoners here in the UK about not being treated fairly, and a lot of corruption in the jails, and a lot of the officers bringing drugs in, and you know the place that's not supposed to be. You're supposed to take people out of this environment of drugs and crime, and they're going into an environment
into the middle of it
with more drugs and more crime, and then they end up connected with this big network by the time they come out, and straight back on the job. And unfortunately, the system is kind of set up like that. And I've heard various stories on a lot of the true crime podcasts that I listen to, fascinate me. And you know, as they're working out the jail, the officer will usually say, "See you next week."
Right.
You know, you'll be back.
Yeah.
You know, and you do get some people who do realize once they go in there and they think, this is not what I'm about. They might have to pretend they're about that life to get through it, survival and stuff. But once they get out, they're like, right, I'm never going back there again. And they do get themselves on the right path. Unfortunately, the majority of them don't, and repeat offend, and it's just a never-ending cycle and stuff. But I think a lot of it, as we were saying earlier, is to do with this drug war. And I think if they ended the war on drugs, abolished the black market, and really
what up with that? Maybe when I came to Britain, you know what I'm saying? It was we was like a class C or something like that.
Cannabis, yes, it was.
Cannabis was. Yeah. And you know what I'm saying? In the U.S., it was basically forbidden everywhere. Now, state by state, is out. I mean, you know, say legalizing, and now it's going to become. So that was the individual states.
And you still have people in America on the 3-strike rule for small possession charges. They're never going to get out in a state where it's now legal.
Yeah, but people here, they just started. I mean, this is, I think, one of the changes that will be coming with. I assume this is one of the things they're promising with this new after Trump situation, to federally legalize it. So, you know what I'm saying? So instead not just individual states, just go and legalize it and just tax it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Make that, I mean, you're going to make money off of it. Take it out of the black, I mean, What do they say? You know what I'm
Maybe
saying?
they won't have much choice after this situation.
You know what I'm saying? Think about it. They're probably going to have that, you know what I'm saying, that option, which is ironic because when I left the U.S., you know, so obviously there was no legal, you know what I'm saying, medical marijuana. I think that was like one city was doing it. That was back in the mid-2000s. You know what I'm saying? Now it's dozens of states. And over here in Britain, you know, they criminalized it. And I just thought, oh, man, I thought Europe was the other way around. What's up?
Yeah, it's backwards.
What happened?
Well, it's corruption. No, there's no other way to say it's corruption.
It was the conservatives that took control. I mean, I'm not going into politics. I just remember right after that.
I mean, left, right, doesn't really matter. A lot of them are involved with big pharmaceutical companies. A lot of people right now in positions of power making decisions about this whole situation we're in have shares. One of them has £600,000 shares in GSK, and one of them's wife works for this and that. And you can just keep seeing the connections, and you can see why... cannabis being legalized and people being told they can have their own medicine is a big threat to the pharmaceutical industry. They're going to lose a lot of money, you know, and it might be happening in America, and we're seeing all these positive stories coming out how kids with epilepsy have had this miracle drug of cannabis, and then all of a sudden they stop having seizures. Loads of stories. I know there's a whole science to it, and it probably depends on what types, and you know, there's so many 100 and odd different chemical compounds that consist of it, isn't it? Cannabinoid system and stuff. So it is a very complex thing. But they're trying to say that there's the British politicians and stuff are saying that there's no evidence that it can be used to treat anything, and there's just not enough data. We just don't know enough. Well, look at America. They've been talking about it for over a decade.
It used to be the reverse. I remember in the early 2000s, people talking about, look at Europe, look at Britain. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. They don't make it, you know what I'm saying? They're not turning people into, you know, ex-convicts. They're not destroying their life after this. You know, they're doing it, you know, that was before. So,
and I will say, you know, I'm not trying to promote it or glamorize it, especially to the younger generations and stuff who I don't really believe should be doing things like that, especially before.
I'm just playing.
Especially before your brain's fully developed, you know, and you've got a grasp of the world and what you actually want in life and stuff. But, you know, there is them people that it has helped. And it's got them through bad times and stuff, as long as they choose to step out of that and it doesn't lead to like a dependency on it or something like that, because that can be a problem.
Major fan of CBD, so I mean, CBD oil,
of course.
Definitely.
I mean, of course, it's the THC compound, isn't it, that gets people high and stuff. But I mean, that alone does get demonized, especially in this country. And they try to say that, you know, we'll legalize CBD, but definitely not the THC stuff.
I see, you know, saying that there's a world that's changing. The dynamic may no longer see yourself as the standard. And I don't know if that's a bad thing or good thing, but there used to be a time where one type of individual was seen as the example by which all other people had to follow. And so as times have changed, people are challenging that perception. That's what we do as human beings. We challenge boundaries. And in the meanwhile, it does rub people the wrong way. It makes people feel like individuals are indifferent to the successes, the productive things that have come about, and focus only on the things that are not necessarily good or may not even necessarily be relevant in the time that they're living in. You know what I'm saying? You've been talking about something in the past when you're living today. So I can understand how it would piss people the hell off, you know what I'm saying, and rub them. So I want to maybe give them a different perspective, not to convince them otherwise, but know that not an adversary to you. But I'm interested as to how you came to that conclusion and what, you know what I'm saying, how it's had an impact upon me. So the same dynamic that you're experiencing, I'm experiencing. Yeah, I lived at the time where there wasn't a lot of people like myself on TV. There was some, and a lot of them were extremely popular. Now it's more mainstream. You see a lot of people on TV and social media and in the public representing every aspect of society.
Yeah.
Like I said,
times have definitely changed.
You know what I'm saying? But that change is people are fearful of. And you know what I'm saying? I completely understand that. I can't tell people, don't be afraid, you know, don't be scared. You know, you shouldn't be concerned. Any changes from what once was to what will be. And it's the what will be is the most concerning. What does it, and what step does that take from there? You know what I'm saying? So if we do this, if we do A, what's B? What's Z or Z? I think people jump to the end so fast that, before we can even look at the other factors.
Yeah, we talked about that last time, didn't we?
Exactly.
About the end and stuff. But there's so much more in between now and the end.
That's true.
No. Yeah.
So, you know what I'm saying, as always, man, I'm always appreciative of being here and that you listening. You know, we got Dr. Martin here. He's, been a perfect host. And
it's great to have you on. Hopefully we'll get a few more episodes.
I would like that. I like that. You know what I'm saying? I like to think that every conversation is getting better, you know what I'm saying, that we're flowing because we're feeling more comfortable talking to each other.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So, but we'll leave it at that. Just everybody, to the best of your ability, be as human as you can. See everyone else as being as human and as you are. And maybe we'll make this, maybe we'll get this thing together.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much for joining us again today, Marcus. And thanks to all the new subscribers again, as I said in the opener, and to anyone just joining the stream right now. Very much appreciated. You can contact me at elusive.media@hotmail.com. PayPal address is the same. Big thanks to everyone who's contributed over the last few months. And I hope to see you all soon.
Take care.
You want the raw true, it's the frontline stand. Media tear holes in the train. They divide us up tight just to limit the change. But united we rise, the whole thing advance. When the truth pops off, ain't no holding it back. Different lives, same fight, all under attack. IE Media, yeah, we're closing the cracks. Welcome to the show, peel the lies off the facts. Got a story that cuts deep, something real the world should know. Tap in with Marty Hardy, IE. He amplifies voices that never get shown. Every bit of support helps the vision grow. And together we lift this higher till it hits worldwide. Beyond this little studio. Real people, real stories, real talk. Welcome to the show.